Minority Report is one of those early 2000s sci-fi films that I've been meaning to get to for a long time, especially being a fan of something like Psycho-Pass. The film is directed by Steven Spielberg and stars Tom Cruise as John Anderton, a chief of police for the Pre-Crime Department, which is a law enforcement department that uses precogs. These are 3 people that can see future crimes. They use this as evidence to arrest people before they commit those crimes, until Colin Farrell's character Danny Witter shows up as an investigator for the Attorney General who wants to investigate the Pre-Crime Department, kind of like an audit. Well, guess what? John Anderton's name is slated to be the next killer by the precogs. Feeling that he was set up, you guessed it, Tom Cruise goes a-running. The film presents a lot of themes of morality if it's driven by character or fate, how you can potentially change your own fate, or maybe you're just destined on a preset path. Themes of being driven by guilt and holding on to that grief that can lead to your own destruction if you let it, and there's a lot of complex themes that you can think about here, but the film doesn't really care to explore those super much, but instead kind of rather wants to focus on the conspiracy crime mystery front and center. It gives you enough bread to make you feel like the film is larger in scale and idea without having to spend a ton of time on the minutia. Yes, I do wish the film would have explored those themes a little more, but it's kind of used as a nice level of spice to pump up the narrative that does feel full circle without harking on the grief of John Anderton. The film is vast with sci-fi concepts that's devoid of our world but feels natural in the world it's set in. Again, without wasting a ton of time on it, just go with it. For a film that's over 2 hours long, there really isn't any fat here, which made the runtime fly by. Sure, the CG is very dated, but knowing this is from the early 2000s, it's still pretty impressive. The world isn't as stylized as something like Blade Runner, but it does have a character of its own and lends itself to enrich the story. Anderton is trying to prove his innocence, but is he going to fall into a predetermined destiny? It's a fascinating conundrum for the main character to have, and it makes for a pretty thrilling watch. You want to know what his character does next and how he may be able to break out of this cycle. The film is trying to be a dark and gritty detective story that unfortunately packs some of Spielberg's cornball nature into some of the action set pieces that feels pretty tonally imbalanced. Spielberg can do dark and hold that tone, but too much of his Indiana Jones kind of comes through here in the action set pieces that makes them honestly some of the worst parts of the movie, especially this jetpack scene. If the whole film kind of had this popcorny vibe to it, then it would mesh, but the entire film is presented as a very dark, gritty, and conspiratorial thriller that having moments like this is just kind of eye-rolling and honestly brought the film down quite a bit for me. I still think that this film is pretty awesome though, with a great cast and honestly some really intriguing story moments that I wasn't really quite sure who the villain was. That at the big surprise kind of made me feel like I probably should have seen that coming. This is one that definitely is worth checking out and one I'll be watching again at some point. It's one that could go up on a second viewing, but it could go down on a second viewing, but for now I'm giving this one a 7.5 out of 10.